Hey everyone, this is Anson, and I just came out with this new piece called Days of Christmas. I wanted to share my process and a couple tricks I learned while making it. I began by collecting reference of what I wanted to see compositionally as well as details specific to gingerbread houses. I then parameterized a base house and began creating some simple candies that I knew I'd want to have in my scene. I created this candy cane by selecting faces with normals and then coloring it. Everything was parameterized so it could all be controlled and art directed. I then got a head start on the frosting because I knew that was going to be one of the hardest parts of procedurally modeling in this project. To create the squiggly icing on top, I scattered points in a volume using the tetrahedral point distribution. Next, I deformed a curve using a custom point VOP controlled by a ramp parameter. I copied the curve to the earlier points and then merged all of these curves together with VDBs and then applied a mountain sop to add some of that natural frosting variation. To create the icing that went around the edges, I swept a cylinder across these curves and then applied a mountain sop for some variation. Next, I distributed points on the bottom faces and used some vex code to randomly vary the length of each line that was copied to these points. I controlled the width of these filled lines using another ramp parameter. To create the illusion that the icing on top has been dripped over the rest of the icing, I select the top faces by normals, displace them using a peak node, scatter points, and convert these points to VDBs, adding variation to their width and location. I do this twice and then combine all layers using VDBs to apply smoothing operation. To create the sprinkles, I resample the original curves and copy spheres to the points, assigning their color based on their point number. I then convert these to VDBs just so I can carve them out of the original frosting to give the illusion that the sprinkles have been indented into the frosting. I used my imagination to plan what decorations I wanted on the rest of my house and then got to work. To create the licorice windows, I began by copying cylinders to the points of a hexagon. I then twist these points and parameterize all potential options including the fall off at the end so it looks like they were cut with scissors. Next, I deformed the licorice along a path to create a window shape. I then perform an intersection analysis between the house base and the licorice windows. I use the resulting points as the basis for the frosting that glues the two together. I then use my node group to scatter some icicles on this frosting. I cut the licorice out of the frosting so that it appears indented. I combine everything with VDBs. To create the cute curly icing on the front, I hand place some curves and then displace them using a custom point VOP that displaces points in only 2 dimensions using noise to avoid frosting coming off the edge of the house. I distribute pearl candies where the curve view attribute is equal to 1. VDB operations are used again to help the frosting to appear natural when combined with other elements. To create the star-shaped icing that goes around the bottom of the house, I select every other point using a group wrangle node and then scale them in. Using similar methods to the ones discussed, I wrap the frosting around the base of the house in an attempt to make it feel hand-placed. I then use all other objects that may be intersecting with the frosting, and again use the trick of performing a VDB SDF difference. I use a density map to paint where I want the snowdrift icing to appear. I also use density maps to tell where I want to scatter 2 million tiny cubes to produce all the powdered sugar and the little crumbs. My first test renders were created in RenderMan, but its CPU render was slow and made fast iteration impossible. Its XPU engine lacked support for procedural shaders and crashed Houdini a lot. I also considered using Karma, but its XPU engine was just as buggy, and it had a lot of trouble instantiating all this geometry into a LOP network for use in Solaris. For these reasons, I decided to jump into Cycles X, where I was able to quickly test shaders and get really fast and stable feedback using both Eevee and Cycles. I was also very impressed by how stable Blender's CryptoMat system is, which allowed me to individually adjust both objects and materials in compositing. I would have liked to use Nuke for all of the compositing because of its caching and multithreading, but it didn't work the same way with filmic color transforms that Blender automatically applied, so I just used Nuke to add film grain. Finally, I used GIMP to make some final tweaks to turn this into this. I really enjoyed working on this project, and it was a big learning experience for me. If you have any feedback regarding my workflow or my art style, please feel free to leave a comment. Thanks so much, and I look forward to seeing you next time.